Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Emilio.
I'm Julian.
And I'm Madeline. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've decided to create some order to this ongoing trend and record these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 distinct, categorizable guidelines for engagement.
This podcast is an evolving thing. Changes and tweaks here and there will most likely happen. But while we do it, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we're going to continue and kind of wrap up our current cycle of movies related to unique Best Picture winners with a category that we call Close Up, which is going to be a deeper dive into the career of a professional in the movie business. We will most likely stay away, well, we'll definitely today stay away from bigger names, so to speak, and focus more on some lesser-known figures, like character actors or writer-directors, and discuss at least 3 or 4 of their representative works and characteristics that exist throughout them. And today, this is kind of exciting. I will admit, I came into this one maybe a little lukewarm. But
yeah, from the beginning, Julian, you were like, I have an idea. I'm all in on this one. And I think Emilio and I were both like, wow, this guy's in some really long movies.
Yes. And it's just hard for me to get through a 3-hour movie these days anymore. But understandably,
people think that the 3-hour movie has been a more recent phenomenon, that Marvel kind of like brought this back into the conversation a bit. And maybe they did make them more common to an extent. But these movies that we're talking about are 50 years old.
Exactly.
And they are just as long.
And we're going to talk about somebody who happens to have been in a couple of very, very famous ones. His name is John Cazale, and I might mispronounce his name as we keep going.
I keep
feel
saying
like
Cazale.
I've heard his name.
Yeah, Cazale is what I've said.
Cazale,
Okay.
Yeah.
Cazale.
Well, sometimes with names that are
Cazale.
spelled like that, people can are equally likely to say it a few different ways that are all acceptable.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's
even
like-
with like the Corleone family, you hear people be like Corleone.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Totally,
Exactly.
Totally, yeah.
I'll say Cazale, but I've heard Cazale or Cazale before.
Yeah.
But yes, we're here to talk about John Cazale today. By that name, you may not know him, but you almost certainly, the listener, are familiar with Fredo Corleone.
Yes, which is probably his most well-known role.
Yes, without a doubt, and one of the most iconic characters in film history, period.
And his first feature film.
First feature film, also true.
Yeah.
Yes, and these are, of course, The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2.
And we'll get into a couple of his other films. Notably, he did not make very many movies.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, and one of the reasons, I think, Julian, why you were excited to talk about him is because probably more than most actors, his legacy maybe is somewhat defined by the category itself of Best Picture winner or Best Picture nominees, right?
Yeah, and as we were assembling the schedule for this episode cycle, initially it seemed like the close-up, like this was going to be the hard one to fill. You know, when you're looking at Best Picture winners, I mean, I think my first thought was to look to a producer who might have a distinct mark on their movies. But what's difficult about that is a lot of those producers are either like very obvious big names, or they're people who, they're big, they have an impact on their movies, but it's hard to see that in the content of the movie itself.
Right.
It's more maybe in the stories around it. Someone like, well, fittingly for The Godfather, Al Ruddy. There's a very well-known story about how he helped to assemble The Godfather.
Right.
But, it's like that sort of thing, it's very well known. And I was like trepidatious about, well, what could we really add to the conversation with someone that prominent? And then I started thinking, okay, maybe not a producer, maybe an actor, and like a character actor at that. And then that was when John Cazale came to me, and I was like, oh my God, he's perfect for this.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, there are a lot of other actors, I think, that maybe you associate more specifically with Oscar winners. You know, I was just kind of looking down the line here a little bit. Katharine Hepburn, she stands above all of them. She's won 4 of these things, spanning literally almost 50 years between wins, which is totally wild. Meryl Streep, who we will totally get to.
Absolutely. We will get to some Streep talk.
We're going to get to some Streep. I think Daniel Day-Lewis would be another one.
Yeah.
Notably, recently, Frances McDormand
But as you said, Julian, it's like, as you're kind of thinking about producer names, we run into the same issue with actors where we're like, well, do we want to talk about a huge name like Katharine Hepburn? Like, do we want to do a close-up on somebody who's already like lauded for their influence and their success? Or do we really want to dive into the career of someone who's a little less appreciated? I think that's more interesting for us.
You could make an argument, by the way, and we've already agreed we're going to talk about John Cazale, but Walter Brennan, do you guys know about his story?
No.
So Walter Brennan won 3 Academy Awards in the span of, I think, 4 or 5 years. And it was because of his wins that there were some changes made in the voting body of the Academy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And, but he very famously won 3 of them like right away, and nobody really knows who he is. So I thought, if everything fell through on this guy, maybe we could talk about him. But I think it stands to say that we're going to have a good time talking about the subject for today.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's worth saying too that we are not the first people to do this deep dive into John Cazale. Because these are such well-known movies, there is content that exists in the world that serves a similar purpose, and we'll do our best to kind of put our own spin on it. But one of those pieces of content that I know Emilio and I at least drew from for this was this about 40-minute long documentary that came out in 2009 called I Knew It Was You, Rediscovering John Cazale, in which a lot of his colleagues from those 70s movies that he was in, and younger, more contemporary to that time actors just like talk about his legacy, what was so great about him.
One of the things that struck me about that is, even if you don't know who John Cazale is, he is your favorite actor's favorite actor.
Yeah,
totally.
That's what it is.
I mean, it's almost feels like a cliche to say, but if he had lived longer, to think of all the things that he could have done, I'm almost certain that he would have won an Oscar if he had lived longer enough.
And he
Yeah.
never was nominated for anything while he was
He was
alive.
nominated for a Golden Globe, but
That's right.
not for an Oscar.
Yeah.
Correct.
And but his movies received, I think, something like a combined 40 nominations in a short
Crazy.
6-year span.
Insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. This guy really knew how to pick them.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
I
Or
don't
maybe
know that the SAG Awards were doing ensemble, like best ensemble, or even if the SAG Awards were around. But nowadays you'll see actors be like, this person won a SAG Award for best ensemble, meaning like they were in this movie. And I'm sure he would have racked up some of those if this award had existed at the time.
Well, that's
100%.
probably true. Yeah, for both of the Godfathers, at least.
Oh, man, yeah. More on that later. Remind me.
Yeah.
The casting of that movie is really fascinating. But
Oh, yeah, it totally is. But yeah, so John Cazale has this famously limited film resume, and we might as well say what it is now in full. So the first 2 Godfathers, we've mentioned that already, along with Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, followed by Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon, which we're going to get a little deeper into today, along with Michael Cimino's The Deer Hunter, which was his final film role.
Yep.
And it's worth noting, too, not only did he have this great run, this was it for him.
Yeah,
like
nothing else.
those 5 movies, the only feature films that he was in.
And he does not live to see the Deer Hunter premiere.
That's right. Yeah. I think that filming had already wrapped by the time that he passed away, but he did not live to see the finished product.
yeah.
Yeah. But so, yeah, he's just, this person who rubbed shoulders with so many names that we know so well. And yet, probably because of his tragically short span of life, that's why not as many people know him as should.
Yeah, in watching that documentary that you mentioned before, there are extensive interviews with Al Pacino, and man, it's so funny, man. Listening to Al Pacino talk about John Cazale it's almost like listening to a Michelin star chef recall the best meal he's ever eaten.
Yeah.
It's so funny. He has this just wide-eyed exuberance for reminiscing about what it was like to have John Cazale as a sparring partner. It's crazy.
Yeah, they have a really interesting relationship, I think, that I admire a lot. I didn't watch the documentary, but just reading a little bit about like the two of them met and became friends before either of them had really garnered much success in acting. They met at Standard Oil. I don't know exactly what the story is there.
Working odd jobs as struggling actors when they were just younger.
Trying to get by.
And they start by working together on stage and then ultimately move into film.
Which was something that John Cazale was very busy with. He kept a very busy schedule doing a lot of stage plays and whatnot.
In fact, I mean, though his film resume is so famously limited, his theater resume is much more extensive.
Totally.
Particularly when you think about what a short time span it is.
It's true. Yeah. But it's also worth noting that this great run of films that John Cazale was in was towards the end of his overall lifespan, and that most of his theater career was before that, though it didn't all end with the film career.
He was busy throughout.
And he was pretty prolific too.
For sure.
So just to put this in a little greater context, John Cazale lived from 1935 to 1978, made it to the age of 42.
Going back to this documentary that you and I had a chance to get into a little bit, it was really interesting, and I don't know if it was just because these actors, a bunch of them are pretty well-known ones. Olympia Dukakis, Sam Rockwell, Philip Seymour Hoffman, amongst them, Steve Buscemi. They really, it's just interesting, man. They speak so lovingly of what this guy was able to do well, and it's funny, even the actors and the people who knew him in his life almost talk about him. Do you guys know who Bo Jackson was?
No.
Bo Jackson, it's all good.
Not to be confused with BoJack Horseman.
Absolutely. No, Bo Jackson was the first really, really famous two-sport athlete. So there was like Deion Sanders, but right before him came Bo Jackson. And Bo Jackson famously was like, he was like a living tall tale. People would talk about him and his sports exploits the way people talk about like Paul Bunyan or something. Like it was like you couldn't believe what this guy was doing. And it's funny, but listening back to that documentary, there's a little bit of that in when people talk about John Cazale. It's this, they're loving, but they feel like he really hit on something really ineffable. And I was trying to figure it out myself a little bit too, but it really seems like he found a way to make meekness and having an unease in one's skin, which is something that's very endemic to being an actor, I think. That you were allowed to embody characters or imbue characters with that, and characters that didn't have a whole lot to do and make them truly memorable.
Yeah, it's like this is someone who, no matter how small the part was, he gave it his all. And the people in that same documentary, that people who knew him were saying that he was a big question asker. That like often on sets, when he was working with the other actors, to get deeper inside their roles, he would ask them a lot of questions, both to know himself and to know them, because he was someone who worked from context. He thought he could make his parts more real by having the others around him be more real. So he was very generous as an actor in that way, and that he was someone who famously, to people who knew him, took his time too. He was it's hard for him to get out the door, apparently. Hard for him to get out the door. And like there was someone told a story, maybe it was Meryl Streep in that documentary, that like if you would go out to dinner with him, that you'd be talking with him and you'd be all the way done with your meal, ready to get the check, and he'd still have half his plate left.
Right.
Which I got to be honest, that's relatable. I'm that guy sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
I take my time with things.
Oh, that's good.
But I felt a little validated hearing those John Cazale stories.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I mean, you were saying just sort of like the emotion that you can read on him at all times. Like I remember seeing this Sidney Lumet quote, which I think is on the commentary for Dog Day Afternoon, saying that one of the things he loved about Cazale was that he had a tremendous sadness about him.
Yeah.
That people would always talk about his eyes. That there's
very expressive eyes, which I imagine with that hairline, it just draws a lot more emphasis.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about Pacino earlier too, and you talked about him asking questions. Pacino always talked or mentioned many times that he said you never knew when acting started for John and when it ended.
Yeah.
And so there was this weird way where it almost acting became very immersive with him. The asking of questions, and it was like suddenly, before you knew it, you found yourself in the scene, in the character. And man, I mean, Pacino, seriously, people, anybody out there listening, you need to find yourself somebody who talks about you the way Pacino talks about acting with John Cazale.
Yeah.
It's a real relationship, #relationship goals.
Yeah.
He just loved that guy to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, it's just the fact that you can be this person who people like Pacino and De Niro and Meryl Streep bow down
Robert
to.
De Niro. Yeah. De Niro.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just said that.
Yeah, it's those people of that stature can bow down to you. I mean, it's just
Pretty wild.
it's wild, but I think that part of just the legacy that we are left with John Cazale is that because he didn't get to live very long, he is a bit of an enigma too.
Yeah.
That when Sidney Lumet would point out that tremendous sadness, I don't remember who it was, maybe it was him or someone else in the documentary saying you just can never pin down where it came from. That and most people I think surmise that it was just that he had an abusive father or something like that, or his father was a traveling businessman who was not home a lot, and when he was an intense presence. That was what what was mentioned in the documentary, but ultimately it's not known in a very empirical way. If something happened to him to inflect him with that tremendous sadness. I mean, we probably never will know.
Yeah. Whatever it was, if there was an origin or whether it was something based purely on his chops as an actor, it's something that really you just see time and time again. And maybe as a way to start talking about his roles, I think it's one of the most identifiable characteristics of Fredo, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Fredo being the, second born of Vito Corleone and his wife. He has the older brother and he has a younger brother and obviously, sister as well. In that movie, even from the very the first time you see him on screen, he seems like the brother that you just kind of look after and make sure he's not going to get into trouble.
Yeah. It's my thought about Fredo is that he was born into the wrong family. That you really get the sense that if the family around him happened not to be the mob, then he could maybe find a path for himself in life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But this is, these are the cards that he's been dealt, and he has to do what he can with them. And that first time you meet him in The Godfather Part 1. I mean, technically the first shot he's in is in a group photo scene in the wedding.
Yeah, technically. But the first time you hear him speak is when Michael's introducing him to Kay.
Right. And he's kind of awkward there.
He's super awkward. Yeah. He looks like he's already had too many to drink.
Yeah. He's leaning in to kiss Kay.
He's like, have you met my brother? It's like, oh, yeah. I think she has.
Yeah. And so, and that first time, I mean, all you really know, I wonder what it was like to watch this movie fresh in 1972.
Yeah.
That he's part of the family, but you don't necessarily know if you're going to see any more of him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, watching the movie this time with the attention to him specifically, I pointed out more scenes where he's in the background, but he's still there.
Yeah.
That I might not have really noted before.
Until he's shipped away.
Well, he's actually in one really famous scene before he is shipped away.
Yeah.
Which is when the hit is put out on Vito.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's like, you could argue that any number of people could have been in that role.
Yeah.
Famously, the driver was sick.
Yeah, he was sick.
So somebody had to step in, and again, kind of, it feeds into the idea that Fredo is...
He's almost a
he's
lackey.
Around. Yeah. He's just kind of around, but he's around more than Michael is. Michael is...
Yeah.
There's a very clear delineation within the family that Michael stays away from.
Like Vito's thought process, though, is that Michael's going to be on a different path of success. Exactly. Michael's going to be like the politician. Michael's going to gain power in a different way. And then Sonny is going to take over the Don role.
Yes.
And then Fredo's just here. Does anybody need anything?
Yeah.
Can we send Fredo to help with something? Get him out of the house?
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, he is driving his dad around the day that, he gets shot at and almost dies from. But famously in that scene, he has a gun, tries to pull it out, bumbles and drops it, and famously sort of left with that look on his face of, I can't believe what just happened.
Yeah, of guilt.
Of guilt
and
and
at that point, you don't
incompetence
know if Vito makes it through this or not. So,
Totally.
so in your mind, in Fredo's mind, he's like,
I let my dad die.
just watched my father get killed and it's my fault.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more you know his character, the more you see how a moment like that could just totally
Break him.
break him and unravel him.
Yeah, and then like The Godfather, of course, is a movie that we've all seen before. I'm not sure how many times I've seen it, but this was like at least my fourth viewing of it. I think in the past, that there were two scenes with Fredo in part one that always stood out to me, and that was one of them. And the other one is a Vegas scene later on, which we'll get into. But of course, paying this closer attention for this particular watch, I was counting the scenes a little bit more, and I think he appears in kind of like only 5 scenes in the movie in this 3-hour epic. So it's not a lot of screen time, but it's memorable when he does appear. And, along the way in between, this assassination attempt on Vito and him being shipped off to Las Vegas, there's, one of the other times that you see him, maybe the only other one, is after Vito comes home from the hospital. And, the whole family is gathered there to...
Around his bed or something?
Yeah, around his bed. And initially, Fredo's, they're like, I think it's, Tom Hagen and Sonny are updating him on what's going to happen. And then, like, they say Fredo's going to Vegas, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to learn the casino business.
Yeah.
And, you kind of get the sense that they're just like, they're doing that to give him something to do.
Exactly.
It's someone else in the family potentially could have done it, but, they've got him around, might as well, have him do this, sort of field work for them.
Yeah, it's like in Succession when they ship Roman off to like managerial school or whatever. Like,
I could not help but think of Succession as I watched this.
It's funny that you both mentioned this, because I think while watching through Succession, like, it's tempting to make Corleone family comparisons
definitely.
throughout. And they're like
3 brothers, 1 sister. The same with Arrested Development, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
interesting.
totally.
Yeah.
But it's like, I watched most of that series with my family, and we kept like, coming in and out on certain comparisons. There were points where we could say like Kendall Roy's kind of like Sonny, or that like Roman's a little bit like Michael at times. But the one comparison that always stuck was that Connor is the Fredo. Of
Exactly.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
totally.
Yeah.
And I would say for Arrested Development, Buster Bluth also is the Fredo.
Big Fredo energy from
And,
Buster.
Exactly. And I also love it too, because both of them have the moment where they totally let their dad down in the moment of need. Obviously, we just discussed Fredo bumbling his gun, but in the pilot episode of Arrested Development, right, the police are all seizing the yacht, and they all tell Buster, you have to find a passage out to sea. And he's like all flustered, and he grabs the map, and he's like, okay, okay, obviously the blue part here is land, and then has a panic attack and falls over. So, same. Yeah, very comparable energies there.
Yeah, and of course, like Connor Roy and Fredo Corleone are not exactly the same.
No, but they definitely have similar vibe.
Of kind of like the hanger-on sibling.
And I have to say, this comparison is so accurate that when I was thinking about this earlier of like which of the Roys is Fredo, I forgot about Connor. I was only thinking through the others, and I was like, I guess it's Roman, I guess. Yeah. But no, it's totally Connor.
Yeah. Connor's the Fredo.
Yeah. And so, but in thinking about like the casting of Fredo, that this was a role I think that they were having some difficulty finding the person for before they cast John Cazale, and that he was cast from this play that he was in at the time called Line.
Yeah, which Richard Dreyfuss apparently had some say in speaking to a casting director about.
Yeah, Fred Roos, who was the casting director for The Godfather. And then, I think Fred Roos saw him, and he immediately knew this is Fredo. Must have been those eyes.
Must have been. Yeah. I mean, he has like a hangdog vibe to him. I think that is, like I said before, the whole idea of him being somebody who's able to transmit a lot of pain and insecurity, which is, I think, something that actors they may feel internally, or they just continually call upon to act. I think that his ability to just tap into that so effectively, I think, is something that just really makes his character stand out. You know, you were talking about how he gets shipped off to Vegas, right? And the next sort of big scene. I love that scene so much.
Before you get to that, though, I mean, there's one moment in that, you know, that scene where he's saying he's going to get shipped off to Vegas. There was one moment I noticed this time that I had never noticed before. And that's at the very end of that scene after
He's all alone with his dad.
He's all alone with Fredo. It's like this, you know, this is after like Tom Hagen and Sonny have split off to, you know, discuss matters further. And like the scenery has changed, but it comes back to see Fredo just silently walking in just to sit and keep his dad company while he rests. And it's no more than 10 seconds, but knowing how intentional John Cazale was, you know, that can't have been a fluke.
Or, it's like, was he there to just sit with him in silence? Or was he there to hopefully have some deeper conversation with his dad because he felt like he might not have one ever again?
Yeah, I mean, it could be both. I mean, I assume no more than it just being kind of a meaningful silence. But, you know, that to me stuck out as one of the only moments where you see Fredo as being kind of comfortable in his own skin.
Right. That he's not trying to put on airs in some way, which definitely, I think, defines how we see him when we see him again in Vegas. Right?
Yeah,
he's the guy who was born on third base but thinks he hit a triple.
Yeah,
that's the kind of energy that he has, you know. And he's just gone totally Hollywood. You know, he's dressed so flashily, and it's just like right away you see how different him and Michael are. You know that Michael, he's down to business. He's methodical. He knows he's there to deal bad news.
Yeah,
and he wants nothing to do with the frivolities of Vegas, which is how Fredo has started to identify himself as.
Yeah, because I think he's also like, well, what is the benefit of like being rich and like having these opportunities if I can't use it to like party and have a good time?
Yeah. It really, the essence is that Fredo is not doing much more than representing the family there.
And not doing it terribly well.
And exactly. That he's
just misrepresenting, I guess, the relationship he has with Mo Green.
All he can really like consciously do is reap the benefits.
Yeah.
But so that's why when you know, Michael shows up there, and after he's told him to like get rid of the girls, get rid of the band, and you know, he basically tells Mo Green that they're buying him out, or that, you know, that they're running him out of Vegas, they're taking over. That Fredo takes sides with Mo Green.
Yeah, Fredo's like, you can't force out Mo. Like, you don't know the kind of power he has.
Yeah. You know, after which Michael famously says, Fredo, you're my brother and I love you, but don't ever take sides against the family again.
Yeah. And that's kind of his one stand.
Yeah.
That's the strongest he ever speaks to his brother in the whole movie.
In that one, anyway.
In that movie, yes. But yeah, that's the moment where it's like he does. It's like he tries to take his stand and immediately just gets cut back down. And it's like, nope, you are not running things. There's no illusion that you're running things.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just feeds back into, you know, his character just can't win. You know, stepping a little bit on Godfather 2 or Part 2, but I love how the one scene that you have of him as like a little baby is of him being sick with pneumonia.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's like he's
like,
just a mess from the very beginning, you know?
Yeah. And that scene in the casino in Part 1, I mean, that's the biggest foreshadowing of Part 2 that you get, specifically in regards to the relationship of Michael and Fredo.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, all scenes matter with Fredo and, you know, contributing to that character, but you really learn the most about those two as brothers there.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's our segue into The Godfather Part 2. Or maybe actually first, to keep the chronology, we should say that Godfather is successful, you know, famously wins Best Picture at the Oscars for that year. And then, although interestingly, I actually didn't know this, that it didn't make as good a showing as Francis Ford Coppola thought it would.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What were his expectations?
Yeah, I mean, let me just look up exactly what it won. It won Best Picture, it won Best Actor for Marlon Brando. I think there was maybe an adapted screenplay.
Oh, he didn't win director, is what you're saying.
Oh, he didn't win director. He lost to Bob Fosse. Yeah.
Oh, which Fosse movie is that?
Let me look it up.
Is that All That Jazz?
No, that's too early to be that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cabaret.
Cabaret. I mean, great movie.
Yeah.
Well directed.
I haven't seen it, but
fantastic movie.
Yeah, this pool in which The Godfather wins is against Cabaret, Deliverance, The Emigrants, and Sounder. Got to be honest, two of those movies I don't even know. The Emigrants and Sounder.
Nor do I.
Yeah, I
Don't know those movies. No Cabaret and Deliverance.
Of course.
But so Marlon Brando wins, and then it won adapted screenplay.
That's pretty good. It's a good haul.
It's a good haul.
And
Yeah.
I see if you're Coppola, you're like, damn it, I was so close.
Yeah.
Like, I get that.
He got it 2 years later.
I was gonna say.
But his time will come.
stay the course, buddy.
And Bob Fosse is another one that does not live to see that many more decades. So
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
he needed it.
Coppola is still alive
It's okay,
now.
Coppola.
Exactly.
And as of this recording, the title card for Megalopolis dropped yesterday. Something to be excited about.
Cool.
But, The Godfather still does quite well at the Academy Awards. Maybe gets more of like a typical haul for a Best Picture winner where it's, it's not a sweep, but it's 3 solid awards. Unless there's something I'm forgetting, but I'm not going to look at that
It
now.
was also the highest grossing picture of the year. That's the
Yes.
other thing to
Yeah.
remember is that this was not just a critical darling. It was a massive blockbuster.
Yeah.
Before we were really going to see, I mean, this predates like The Exorcist and Jaws, but this was a pretty seminal film, I think, especially considering the subject matter, considering the length of the film, which we've already talked about. This was a pretty important moment.
It certainly was.
Yeah.
And fresh off of the success of The Godfather, Francis Ford Coppola then goes to make The Conversation, which is a big change from The Godfather. But this is one of the other movies that John Cazale stars in his short film career. And The Conversation, it's released in the same year as The Godfather Part 2, though I believe it's filmed beforehand. It's filmed beforehand. It's released beforehand. And I mean, not an unsuccessful movie critically. I mean, it didn't win the Oscar. It did win the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Quite an esteemed prize in its own right. But it still was nominated for the Best Picture Oscar. And I know that, this movie was not part of our required viewing for this particular podcast episode. But I think, Emilio, you've seen it before, right?
Yeah. I've seen this movie twice, actually, but it's been probably about 10, 12 years since I've seen it last.
And Madeline, you haven't seen it,
I've not
right?
seen it. I had kind of intended to, and there's just too many movies and they're too long. So I plan to still watch it. So feel free to talk about it, but try to keep it relatively spoiler free.
I will certainly do that. But yeah, it's, just to keep the continuity with John Cazale here. But in this movie, he's the second highest billed after Gene Hackman. And he plays a character named Stan Ross, who is basically the second in command.
Yeah, he's like an assistant, basically,
to Gene
for him,
Hackman's character, Harry Caul. Whereas Harry Caul is, this anxiety-laden character, it's really funny to watch Gene Hackman like that. Just a few years after The French Connection,
I know, very, very different
maniac cop in that
characteristics.
movie. It's like he's such the polar opposite in The Conversation.
Yeah,
but and then Stan Ross is kind of just the guy helping him keep his cool. And I mean, we talked about Joe Pantoliano on a prior episode, and it was kind of like, this to me felt like John Cazale's Cosmo Renfro.
it really. That's a really good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's he's not an undeveloped character, but he's not the main object of attention. But there are points when he just kind of makes this casual aside in one scene that gets Harry Caul to snap at him.
Right.
If it had been any different person, probably would have been nothing. But Stan Ross has the gall to do that.
Right. Well, they have the kind of relationship where they can kind of say whatever to one another.
Yeah.
Obviously they work together, but you're right. He's kind of like a pressure release valve.
Yeah.
At times for Harry.
And then, without saying exactly what happens, he does do this kind of Fredo-like thing a little bit into the movie that, just this kind of like sort of resigned career move that you get the sense that he's doing not out of aspiration, but out of just, kind of like a basic desire for people to like him.
Right.
But it's, it's not like the most seismic thing either. And he really, most of the time, is there to kind of like, temper out the anxiety of Harry Caul. One interesting thing I noticed, though, in the set of this movie, so a lot of it takes place in Harry Caul's workshop, which is this like very expansive sort of loft space in a building in San Francisco. And in what seems to be Stan Ross's workstation, look for this next time you watch. I believe there is what I believe to be like a street vendor's portrait of the character there. like the kind of thing you'd get from someone in Central Park.
Right.
Except it's John Cazale with a gigantic head. No one calls attention to it inside the narrative of the movie, but I just thought like, well, that can't have been an accident.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of self-mythologizing.
Yeah.
Just sneaking onto camera.
Yeah, that could be it. Whether that's in the character of Stan or in the reality of John Cazale, we may never know.
Maybe
it's both.
Yep.
Knowing how invested in his characters he got. But yeah, on the topic, as a side note, on the topic of supporting performances in that movie, John Cazale is great. But this is a great place to see a very young Harrison Ford give a deeply unsettling performance.
Definitely.
It's nothing like Han Solo. It's nothing like Indiana Jones.
And it's nothing really like his character in American Graffiti either.
Right, which is the year before.
Yeah.
But it's it's kind of amazing to see Harrison Ford do what he does in this movie.
Yeah, I would put that in the category of something like The Mosquito Coast,
which I haven't seen.
Which it just you watch Harrison Ford and all of the star system metatextual stuff that goes on in your brain when you see him on screen. It's just not going to work. He looks a little different, and he certainly acts in a very different role. So
yeah. But that's the conversation. And then, this movie, it's a great movie, but it does kind of get overshadowed later in that same year by The Godfather Part 2.
Right. Which I forgot, man, just how good this movie is. It really does take everything that The Godfather sets the table for and just goes to town. It's and it's just such an ambitious movie.
Yeah.
In terms of the story it tries to tell and everything. But yeah, famously, John Cazale was Fredo in the first film, but I think when the sequel or the prequel, I guess, for The Godfather was being made, Coppola was like, man, we've got a real incredible actor here.
Yeah.
And so his role is fleshed out in not necessarily a ton more screen time, but more screen time. And I think
there's
more
a lot
development.
More significance.
Yeah.
And
he's not like a side part anymore.
Yeah, he is a central figure in the narrative.
Right. Yeah. And just to situate The Godfather Part 2 in this context of unique Best Picture winners. I mean, The Godfather Part 1 certainly is unique, but I think Part 2, stands out even a little more because it is the only sequel, the first sequel ever to have won the award. The only one to have won it alongside its original. I think just in terms of structure, as well known a movie this is, I kind of can't think of anything else that really has the same organization or frequency as The Godfather Part 2.
This split between time periods.
Exactly.
And you're following completely different characters.
Yeah. And there's plenty of movies that are that follow more than one timeline, but that do it. I can't think of another one that has quite this fashion of doing it, that is just so firmly planted in one or the other at any given time. It's not like Oppenheimer where you have this constant back and forth between time periods. It's just so firmly planted in the present day for Michael Corleone and the early 20th century for Vito.
And I think just the fact that it's following two different main characters.
Right. Yeah, and kind of contrary arcs for them.
Yeah.
Within the same family. Yeah, so it's as well known as, abundantly discussed a movie as it is. I gotta be honest, I can't think of another movie that does it quite like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to rack my brain here and I'm coming up with nothing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too that is so cool to see is that, we pick the movie up and the original Godfather, right, starts at a wedding, and then Godfather Part 2 kind of comes in at a communion.
Yeah,
right.
Anthony Corleone's communion.
Communion, exactly.
Communion.
Yeah,
and so these movies sort of situate you right away with these kind of
familial
celebrations, exactly.
Right,
and it's just so. It's just again, you have a previous relationship with Fredo, but you already see that as time has passed, his insecurities and his lack of true authority just has deepened.
Because in the Godfather Part 1, we lose Sonny. you know? So like we already kind of talked about how Fredo is we don't want to say middle child, but he's the middle boy. He's the second born.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in many families, if the firstborn were to tragically pass away, a lot of those responsibilities would move on to the secondborn, right? So and by Godfather Part 2, when that has not happened because Michael has become the Don, he clearly has a lot of like, that's really affected him, where he's like, my little brother, and he says this outright many times, or I think one time directly to Michael, but you can kind of feel it constantly, where he's like, you're my little brother.
I'm supposed to be looking out for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like one of the things that I think sets as much like the first Godfather as this is one of the distinct differences between the two movies that I noticed more this time than any prior time is that the first Godfather has a little more like mystery and suspense to it. And the second one really to me feels more like an elegy.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, because it feels more like the fates of most of the characters are sealed pretty early on in the movie, and you're just kind of waiting for them to run their course.
Yeah,
it's incredibly interesting as it's all happening, but it really feels like there's this wistfulness about that movie that it feels mostly like for all of these characters, like the highlights of their life have gone.
Yeah.
They are past their prime.
I kind of forgot that the moment that Michael realizes that there was some traitor or that there was somebody who set him up for that assassination attempt, the very next scene that you see, to your point, is Fredo getting a call from Johnny Ola.
Yeah.
And immediately, I mean, if you're watching the film and you've seen it already, you'll know that, you know, there's some significance in the fact that it cuts straight from, I wonder who this is, to, well, here you are, he's in front of you. But they don't even really do that. It's very evident right away in that phone call that Fredo's up to no good.
Yeah.
And that he tries to play it off like, no, it was just the wrong number.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's a great point. That it really does feel it's just sort of this like slow crawl towards everyone's fate.
Yeah, like, and even though there's that iconic, you could call it a reveal, but that iconic line when they're in Cuba when Michael kisses him at the New Year's Eve ball drop aggressively and says, "I know it was you, Fredo." I mean, if you know what's going to happen and you see it early on, I kind of sensed this time like he knew it was him from the beginning. Like I think he was, maybe like
there are a couple.
Maybe he had this hunch. Yeah,
he had a hunch that was really confirmed when he blows it.
I think there was like some reasonable doubt that he had as he was still talking to Hyman Roth in his house.
He had to play out these other possibilities.
Yeah, or Pentangeli as well.
Exactly.
And I mean, to be clear, I mean, things are not good for these guys either. I mean,
no,
like
definitely
they don't get off easy.
Yeah.
But it's like you get the sense he's kind of going through the suspects, but he like. And that's even before that revelation scene when Fredo arrives in Cuba and they're talking in that outdoor restaurant beforehand. You get the sense from how Michael is staring him down. It's like he knows he did it.
Yeah.
The banana daiquiri scene.
The banana daiquiri
exactly.
scene. Yeah.
He almost gives himself away in that moment.
Yeah.
He says something to the effect of, I should have been looking out for you. Or he says, there's something he says. He says something and then he kind of backs away from it a little bit. But one other thing that just really struck me seeing this again was how Fredo physically, and again, speaking to John Cazale and his attention to detail as an actor, how much he tries to look like Vito, his dad. He's the only one of them that kind of starts to adopt that mustache. That's kind of one of the initial ones. But you even see in kind of how he's holding his jaw. He if you look closely, it's like he kind of holds it a little distinctly. And I don't know if he's trying to convey a sense of like genetic connection, but to me, watching it this time, it really felt like he was doing anything he could to imbue himself with the authority that he knew his dad had. Yeah. And to me, that was a little detail or a few little details that I thought were very striking and spoke very much to his attention to detail as an actor.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and a lot of these details, I mean, they get away from you when you watch. You really have to pay close attention. There were things that, like, I remember in that documentary that I think it was Sam Rockwell who pointed out these little ticks that he displays in his deer hunter character that like I didn't even notice when I was watching it, but they're fascinating. But yeah, so and with like Fredo, I mean, it becomes clear pretty early on that he has somehow acted in cahoots with Johnny Ola and by extension Hyman Roth and he is complicit in this assassination attempt on Michael that happens at the end of that communion party. Fun casting note too, Johnny Ola. Did either of you catch who that was?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Whose name is escaping me right now?
Dominic
Chianese,
Yeah.
who is the
Uncle Junior.
Yeah.
Yes, in The Sopranos. There are a lot of little connections here and there, but he's just got a voice that is really recognizable.
Yeah, well, you just hear him there, and you immediately know that's the same voice that shouted, "Where's the fucking manigot?"
Yeah, I know, right? But there's also, and we'll talk about it later. Very briefly, there's Dominic Chianese also in Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's an interesting linkage.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, in thinking about like, unlikely shared universe possibilities regarding these movies, I was just thinking like
in some way.
maybe there's, Corrado Soprano Jr. takes a little detour to Cuba in 1958.
Yeah, very possible.
Under
very
an alias.
Possible. Yep,
and he survives that.
I was going to say, ostensibly, he doesn't get out of Cuba alive. But yeah.
But maybe he, it's a staged death or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the big reveal with Fredo happens, in connection to Johnny Ola, because then there's this party that everyone's attending in Cuba.
Yeah, like a New Year's Eve party.
Like a New Year's Eve party. And then Fredo and Johnny Ola are introduced as if they don't know each other.
Right.
And they have to just kind of fake meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
And then
totally
later
blows
on,
it, though. He totally blows it.
They're watching a show together later on, and then Senator Geary asks Fredo, like, how did you know to come to this? This is great. And he's like, oh, it's Johnny Ola. Johnny Ola knows all the spots around here. And then Michael,
and that's when Michael knows
this.
it.
Yeah, that's when
Fredo has blown it.
Yeah. And
again, he just wants to be liked. That's his thing. He just wants to be liked.
The way that he delivers that line, though, like I sort of think it's interesting. In the past, I would have thought, oh yeah, it's just a gaffe. He forgets like who he's around, and he just says it on impulse. But this time, I was sort of wondering, like, maybe it's that. Maybe it's also he's accepted his fate. Maybe he just doesn't even care anymore.
I don't know. I think he's a little drunk, and I think
true.
he's like showing off for people.
I think so too. Yeah, I think he wants to be liked. Yeah,
he so desperately wants to be liked, and I mean wants to be loved deeply because he's grown up in this family that they're very close, but there's always a catch.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also kind of riding a high right now, right? Because Michael comes to him and he says, "We got these important people here. We want to show them a good time." He's like, "That's my specialty."
Yeah.
And so it's this moment where he's like, maybe all that time in Vegas was for something. Maybe not specifically, but in that moment, he's able to draw on something that feels very much like whatever he's come to self-identify as.
Yeah.
And so, but loose lips sink ships.
Totally. It sinks his ship.
Yeah. I mean, like I had to think of Jacob in A Simple Plan at some points
absolutely.
while watching Fredo, while watching John Cazale perform as Fredo, because it's the loose lips thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the only other case recently in a movie that I've seen where I can think of a character kind of like that who is inextricably flawed. But Jacob Mitchell is a very sympathetic character.
Oh, absolutely.
Too.
I'd say more sympathetic than Fredo.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I would argue that
I do pull for Fredo.
I sympathize with him more than I do Michael. That's for sure.
Yeah.
By the end of part 2, definitely.
Yeah.
Michael is about as cold-hearted as anybody I've ever seen in a movie.
And that's what's so tragic because at the beginning of part 1, you're like...
Yeah, he's like, that's my family. It's not me. It's a K.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It's also like the other connection there is that Jacob in A Simple Plan is kind of like the sibling who all got the short end of the stick.
Absolutely.
Right, totally.
And he's also, I think, the older sibling.
Interestingly, older than the Bill Paxton sibling. And... I'm fleshing out most of this now, but I think, you could draw a lot of connections between those two.
Yeah. I mean, there is, that incident ostracizes Fredo from the family for quite a while, right? And then the next scene that he has with Michael is probably the most expressive scene that he has in either one of the films.
I think that's my favorite Fredo scene.
That
period.
one?
Yeah. The one in the reclining chair.
I love him reclined back. I love the levels between Michael standing and
for
Fredo
sure.
just like fully reclined horizontally.
It's funny because the chair he's sitting in it's so funny. It's like, it's kind of like his big moment to reveal himself, but the chair like physically prevents him from sitting up straight.
Yeah.
So it's not even like he can make a stand. It's like he can't even sit upright.
But I feel like he's also made this choice. This
He
chair
has.
has not been built this way.
Yeah.
Like it can go up, I would assume.
Yeah, it's a wonderful like metaphor, for who Fredo is and kind of how he feels in the family, right?
And
It's like he's firmly in a position of leisure,
Yeah.
but he's also like trapped and enclosed by it, and no matter what he tries to do, he can't. Even in a moment with the seriousness or the gravity that this one has, it's like he's just gonna slump back.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
also feel like there's this intense exhaustion to Fredo by this point, which I think to what
Yeah.
you were saying, Julian, about like maybe at some point he just sort of accepts his fate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at this point in the reclining chair, he's just like, I don't have the energy to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it seems. And then I think, one thing that scene arguably reveals that sets him apart from Michael is that I think Fredo is brutally honest to a fault in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's honest to a fault in general. He's not completely honest, but I think, anyone who looks at him knows his essence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like,
Yeah.
I'm selfish. Like I had selfish like intentions.
He's
It was something
selfish.
he could make for himself, right? Or he
Yeah.
could get for himself.
He's
out
like,
of that moment.
I didn't bother to think about how this was actually what they were actually going to do. Like because
yeah.
I was going to get something out of it, and it's like wasn't important to me.
He's selfish, but he's perpetually never at ease with himself.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if he's acting selfishly, you still kind of feel for him as a viewer. And I mean, one thing that what sets him apart from Michael there, apart from their positions, is that Michael can lie. Like, he,
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
as-
Michael is an upsettingly good liar.
As we know from the end of part 1, is it true, Michael? No.
Yeah.
It's like, we know that Michael can lie and he can be completely poker faced about it. Michael can be a liar, and Fredo, you get the sense that he's just spilling it all out there.
Yeah.
And there's a moment, I can forget the exact exchange of lines, but it's, Michael says something like, Dad had plans for all of us. And then Fredo's like, what about what I wanted?
Yeah.
And
that's the ultimate tragedy of being born into a family like this. Is
Yeah.
that everything is decided for you based on your birth order mostly.
And that was the moment when I knew, like, he was just born into the wrong family. Maybe like things could have been so good for him in another life.
Well, and it's tough too, because by the end of that, what he really just wants is the love of his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That what ends up truly happening to him, that at one point he feels like he's getting it, and it's clearly just, again, Michael's way of
Keep
letting
your
him
friends
down,
close, keep your
letting him
enemies
down
closer.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Connie goes to Michael after they're sort of estranged, and Connie goes to Michael and says, Fredo, he has a good heart, but he's weak and he's stupid, and this is life or death.
Yeah.
And you think, not really, but ultimately this is what kind of spurs Michael to almost pretend make up with Fredo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think still that Fredo knows that his fate is sealed there. And I think that in the scenes that ensue of him teaching Anthony how to fish, like, I think he knows this is the end for
It's
him.
like when you take a dog out for like one last run in the park or whatever,
Yeah.
like before your dog gets put down. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we'll just like make his last days like nice
Comfortable.
and comfortable.
Yeah. And it's, and then I like watching that scene. Maybe that's the only other time that Fredo seems at ease, comfortable in his own skin.
Right. The whole Hail Mary line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's teaching Anthony how to fish. And even when I forget what it is that pulls Anthony away, but like
Connie, I think, calls him and says, like, hey, get over here. Michael
Yeah.
wants you to do something.
Yeah,
or
like,
whatever.
oh, you're going with your dad somewhere.
Yeah.
Which it's like, how much does Connie know?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
Because she at this point is so desperate also for Michael's love and for his money.
Yeah.
that she is another kind of lackey at this point. Like she'll kind of do whatever Michael tells her to do. So did she just get the instructions of bring Anthony over here, or how much does she actually know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm also drawn, again, to the very end, his character can't help but call back to a memory where he did something exceptional that his his other family members didn't, which was he was the only one who caught fish.
Yeah.
Right in that moment. And he's like, do you know what I did? And yeah, I mean, just some heartbreaking stuff.
Well, it just hit me talking about it now. It feels almost obvious in hindsight, but the amount of like death scenes in mafia movies that have to do with fish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, it's
Sleeping with the fish.
Yeah.
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
They do that with Luca Brasi in
to
the
call
first
back
one.
to the first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
But also, without spoiling what it is, there's a scene in The Irishman that fits that bill too. You'll know it whenever you watch it, but that happens. Like I think at that moment when Anthony's called away, like Fredo, I mean, he seems very calm, but I think he knows what's coming.
Sure.
And then he's taken off in the rowboat with Al Neri next to him, and he's saying one final Hail Mary, and that's it.
Yeah. It's interesting too because watching The Godfather and Godfather Part 2, Al Pacino is such a different character than the one that we end up seeing in Dog Day Afternoon.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's a little shocking, and having watched these movies generally in this order, on top of just having an appreciation for John Cazale, I had a real moment of like, yeah, man, Al Pacino. He is
so
incredible.
Yeah.
That he was able to pull off these types of roles and embody them so fully. Just so in such a short span of time. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. If maybe we can start pivoting a little bit to Dog Day.
Yeah.
I have two notes. That first, I have a question, which is: does anyone know why I wrote Mickey Mouse Nightclub in my notes? Is that a line? In
It is a
movie?
line.
Okay.
In that, yeah.
I was like, what? I don't know the context to this.
Yeah,
but I enjoyed seeing it in there.
It was something like it's in that scene that he has with Michael on the recliner. He's like, send him to get someone from the airport. Send him to take care of the Mickey Mouse hotel or Mickey Mouse casino or whatever. But yeah, a reference to the fact that he gets the low position all the time.
And number two, we got to see Harry Dean Stanton in this movie.
That's true.
I always love seeing Harry Dean Stanton, and when he first comes on, he's such a flash, and I was like, "Was that Harry Dean Stanton?"
Wait a minute,
He plays one of the FBI servicemen who is a companion to Pentangeli in Witness Protection.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. I'm remembering him now. Yeah.
It's like a blink and you miss it performance, but he's there.
Yeah.
If you know to look for him and you know his voice, you'll catch him. But interestingly, we've said almost nothing about Pentangeli, but he's the other big sort of like traitor character in Part 2. And we won't get deep into that role, but to have him and Fredo alongside each other, I mean, it's very interesting because I think Fredo, it adds to the, how sympathetic a character Fredo is, that there's something kind of like, it's just like all he wanted was to be liked. And you can feel for Fredo in a way that I think you kind of can't for Pentangeli.
Right.
Yeah. He's just like this greasy guy.
Yeah. But it's interesting. He also has the best voice ever. I love anytime he said anything.
My favorite Pentangeli scene is that in the early on in the communion party scene when he just goes up to the bandstand.
Oh, I love that. They play
like,
Pop Goes the
you guys
Weasel.
don't play anything Italian.
Yeah, he tries to get them to play the Tarantella, I guess.
Yeah, and then they go to Pop Goes the Weasel or something.
Amazing moment. Yeah. But no, and I think those scenes are more or less back to back. The one where Pentangeli, he's in witness protection, and they're like, "Man, you got it good here. Just get to hang out and play pool." And he's just really upset with himself, possibly because he knows that he now has this label against him. But then also, there's just this feeling that life is never going to be the same. And you definitely feel that with Fredo. Like you said, the two of them are kind of, that is a fate that they share, or like a scarlet letter that they share, and ultimately a fate that they share.
Yeah. But to actually transition properly to Dog Day Afternoon, one of the interesting things about Cazale's career is that he is an actor that as much as he did get these prestigious roles, he often had to be advocated for. That, he wasn't like always the first choice, but, after a little bit of sweet talking, people would get him cast in roles. And this is the case for Dog Day Afternoon, that initially the part that he played, Sal Naturel, was meant for
like a teenager,
like
basically.
a 19-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And that was true to the real life person.
Okay.
And I was curious too, because there are a lot of character traits of his character Sal, that I was wondering if they were just shifted over from that of a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
Because he's very naive.
Mhm.
He's still a man who thinks very much like a kid.
Oh yeah, I like the whole time I was thinking that like if you had to say 5 words or less, what is this character? He's a child in a man's body.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so
In some ways, and then in other ways, you learn not so much.
yeah. But emotionally, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so Dog Day Afternoon, this is 1 year after The Godfather Part 2 that it's released in 1975, directed by Sidney Lumet, and it recounts the true story of a bank robbery that occurred in Brooklyn in the summer of 1972. And, you know, the two main robbers in question are played by, yet again paired, Al Pacino and John Cazale.
Yeah. For Al Pacino, an incredibly different role.
Incredibly.
Oh,
And for
yeah.
John Cazale,
Somewhat.
Similar in some
similar.
ways,
Similar,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, I haven't counted it, but I would assume that this is probably the most screen time that he gets in any of these movies, John
Yeah.
Cazale.
Yep.
Yeah, he's on screen a lot, but he doesn't necessarily have that many more lines. I feel like he probably has more lines in The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah.
But he's there a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In typical fashion, I guess at this point that we know him, he's there, but he's kind of not. He's also in many moments rather forgettable because Sonny is the one who most directly calls the shots during this attempted robbery. You know, he's the one who, you know, he says he worked at a bank and, you know, he knows about triggering the safe with a special key and decoy cash and
Yeah.
tripping alarms and stuff. So Sonny does a lot of the talking and even tries to talk Sal up a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm the bark and that guy over there is the bite.
Yeah.
You know, so
He references this a lot. Like he references this anytime he's out with the cops.
Right.
Of like Sal's his leverage.
Yeah,
Like, oh yeah,
definitely.
that guy in there is going to shoot everybody if you do anything to me.
Right.
Interestingly, like this may sound like a surprising comparison at first, but one movie I was thinking about a lot while watching Dog Day Afternoon this time was Fargo.
oh,
Okay.
And well, part of the reason, I mean, weather-wise, it's the polar opposite. But
no pun
part of the-
intended.
Yeah. Seriously though. But you know, apart from that though, it's about, you know, these two criminals who have, you know, like they talk a big game, but they're not that good at what they do.
Definitely not.
But the other thing I thought of is that this dynamic of like, I'm the bark, he's the bite. It made me think a lot of Carl Showalter and Geyer Grimsrud.
Oh, definitely.
totally.
Yeah. This movie also reminded me a lot of Citizen Ruth. I know I've
Okay.
talked to you about Citizen
I've not
Ruth.
seen that movie.
Yeah, that movie is really interesting in the fact that Laura Dern's character she becomes like an unwilling symbol of a movement, right? In very much the same way that Al Pacino's character very much does as well. You know, it's like people just start imprinting things on him, and he plays it up a little bit when he goes out to the cops and he's interacting with the crowds and everything. But it's like for whatever reason, he starts bringing up all these you know, these hot button issues for people. You know, police brutality and like the fed up working man who's you know trying to get something for himself, and then eventually you know the gay community. It's just by the end of it, you realize he's really just kind of a confused, angry guy with some harebrained schemes, and that's a lot like Citizen Ruth. It's just like you know, not to ruin that movie at all, but it's really brilliant how that movie kind of puts this very unwilling person at the center of so many people imprint what they want on this person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a side element of this movie that is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, and then I mean another more probably obvious movie that I was thinking about was Good Time, just with like
Good one.
the bank robbery, obviously part of it, but also I feel like even though Benny Safdie and Robert Pattinson's characters are brothers in Good Time, there's still a similar kind of dynamic to that.
Yeah. Really,
Yeah, like one's sort of looking out for the other one. Yeah.
Like one calls all the shots and one is kind of there as backup.
Oh, I don't know how I didn't think of that. Good one.
Yeah, it's a real good one.
Yeah, that's like, but also, you know, great New York movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's something very visceral about both of them.
I was like, I wonder if this is the same bank, but I'm pretty sure they're in Manhattan.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah. Fun fact about Dog Day Afternoon, this movie was shot very near my childhood home.
Love that.
Yeah, it's like it's walking distance. I have to have passed by that location countless times without even knowing it.
Very cool.
The movie was shot in Windsor Terrace, and you can see it in the movie if you know the streets. It's Prospect Park West between 17th and 18th Streets, right by the Prospect Expressway.
Oh wow.
And
I've walked through there a bunch. Wow,
Yeah.
really?
And there's even more fun fact. around that same area now, there is a hot dog shop called Dog Day Afternoon,
Oh.
which apparently is well reviewed.
Oh, good.
I've been meaning to go there.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Yeah.
If you're gonna take on that name, you better come with some quality.
Oh yeah, it's fun. The funny thing though is that I believe that they are known for having Chicago style hot dogs.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so the actual robbery that took place, it was not in Windsor Terrace. It was in Gravesend, Brooklyn, which is down closer to Coney Island.
Right.
But still, I mean, like Dog Day Afternoon is one of the great New York City movies. It's like, I mean, you know, I had seen this movie before about 12 years ago and just came back to it now. I love this movie.
Yeah, it's a really good movie.
This was the first time I had seen it, and I'm obsessed with it. I'm like, I already want to watch it again. I loved this movie.
Yeah, this is my third time seeing it, and I think I also came away with it. I think I told you, Madeline, this was the big revelation movie for me of the bunch in terms of what it does and how it does it and how it pivots between feeling really chaotic and also extremely small and very aware of people's individual emotions in the kind of latter third of the film. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that really struck me too this time, speaking specifically to John Cazale, is he has a moment in this movie that seems very small, but is extremely telling. It's when things are starting to go bad and they are already alerted to the fact that the police have surrounded the building and that they're not going to get away like they thought they were. And he kind of pulls Sonny in and he's like, you said that, you know, we'd get away clean, and if we didn't, we would kill ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's such a subtle but extremely important revelation that gives the viewer so much to think about with very little. That Sonny probably, you know, said that to get Sal to help him do this, you know, knowing that he was kind of down and out, that he didn't have a whole lot going on, didn't have a great relationship with his family, and he might even have a bit of a death wish.
Yeah.
But now the stuff has hit the fan, and it's really clear that, you know, Sonny isn't nearly as hopeless as Sal is, and that he has something to live for. But the fact that Sal is willing to go there and is like, we said that we would do this, really makes him feel a lot more unhinged and like he could be a ticking time bomb. So it completely sets this feeling of unease.
Yeah. Sonny says that they're Vietnam vets. I think we get confirmation that Sonny is, but I imagine it seems like Sal is as well.
And you get it's in this very brief moment, but Sal mentions that he's been to prison too.
Right. He's like, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And with those crazy eyes too.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's in that same scene as, you know, as they, as when he mentions the suicide pact.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like one of the things about Dog Day Afternoon is like, you really have to pay close attention to get to the core of these characters, because these are like blink and you miss it moments.
Totally.
But yeah, so that, you know, we know he's served in prison, and, you know, there's this desperation you can see in him again. It's the eyes.
Yeah. Big time.
But it also at another moment when Sonny and Sal are kind of considering bargaining with the authorities and getting to, you know, fly off to some destination to be determined.
I love this part.
And then like Sonny asks Sal where he wants to go, and apparently this was improvised by John Cazale. Wyoming.
You know, as soon as I heard that line, I was like, I wonder if that's improvised. It feels like a just really great improvised comedic line.
Yeah.
Apparently Sidney Lumet started laughing off camera, and the two of them on screen held it together long enough for them to keep the take.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally improvised, and it happens so naturally. And again, small little detail, but completely lets you in on this guy and just how kid-like he is, and how pathetic his life probably is at this point. Like he's never been in. He tells later he's never been in an airplane, and it's like,
and he's scared.
What's going to happen to me?
It's like this guy's holding people at gunpoint, and he's afraid to get on an airplane.
Yeah,
yeah. And then I mean, I had to think of.
Wait a second. So he can't have been a Vietnam vet if he's never been on an airplane. How do you get to Vietnam?
Yeah,
by airplane.
Now, I mean, Sonny, I believe, did that.
Sonny, I believe, and I think we get confirmation when they're like looking into him. But
also
Sal, no.
that scene when he's teaching some of the hostages how to like do that little gun dance that they have to do. as a soldier. You know, I had to think when Sal says he wants to go to Wyoming, I had to think of Ratso Rizzo in Midnight Cowboy wanting to go to Florida.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's just, you know,
He's got some real Ratso Rizzo vibes.
yeah.
I think both of them do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just that destination fantasy. I mean, they both have that. But also, like, one of the other scenes where you really learn something about Sal, and it's brief, but it's a little bit more drawn out than most other scenes with him, is that moment in the back room.
Oh, God. So ironic.
Yeah. In the back room of the bank where one of the other tellers is asking someone for a cigarette. The head teller, yeah.
The mouth.
Or, you know, she's asking someone for a cigarette, and then he's like questioning her, saying like, "You smoke?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Why start now?" And then, you know, there's a little back and forth, and he says as to why he doesn't smoke. He's like, "My body is a temple of the Lord," something like that. And honestly, I didn't remember much from my first viewing of this movie years and years ago, but that was one thing I remember.
But then he goes on to say he's afraid of the cancer.
Yeah.
And that broke me.
Yeah.
I looked like this. I was like, oh my God, that's so sad.
For the record, you have both of your hands on the side of your heads. Your head,
God.
pardon me. Yeah.
Because this is before Cazale himself is diagnosed with cancer.
I didn't even think of that.
Oh, yeah, that's why I was like, it's painfully ironic that he has this moment.
Yeah, and it's lung cancer, too, from
Exactly.
smoking.
Exactly. Yep.
It's heartbreaking to watch that scene. I nearly broke down.
Yeah, I mean, because apparently he smoked like a chimney
Yeah.
in real life. So
Well, many people did.
yes, that's
at
true.
that time. But when you look at Sal in that scene, I mean, you know, that to me said, you know, he had some traits of what in, you know, the parlance of the modern day we would call an incel. You know, someone who has like kind of this weirdly like kind of like militant straight edge quality about him. Like,
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I hear that, and I think he's grown up in a pretty sheltered, possibly Catholic environment.
Yeah, he has a mom that clearly loves him and a dad that
Yeah.
does not think very highly of him.
I think the word I'm looking for is he's repressed.
Yeah.
That he's severely repressed. And I mean, you know, for like, I kind of thought of Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver for a moment there.
Okay.
Yeah. And another connection with this character of Sal, which is more just in his appearance though, that hair, had to think of Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men.
A little bit. Yeah. Although Anton Chigurh has got a little bit more of like it's like a bob.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it comes around.
His hairline
sort
is
of,
not receding.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. But it kind of creates like it like encircles his head. And with John Cazale's haircut, it just kind of flows down.
He has a lob.
Yeah.
A
A lob is a long bob.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I learned something new today. Thank you.
Yeah. But one thing that, you know, that Sal Naturel and Anton Chigurh have in common is these are the people you look at them and you instantly know, oh shit, this guy can kill people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because it's like that desperation, I think, is something that as a viewer, now having seen this movie a couple times before, I knew what was going to happen with him. But if I was an eagle-eyed viewer watching this movie for the first time, I would have felt like something very upsetting and very violent was going to happen, you know, at the hands of Sal.
Mm-hmm.
And that these were the breadcrumbs that were being planted in order to remind us this guy does not want to go to prison.
Yeah.
This guy said he would kill himself before he got arrested.
Mhm.
So we don't know what he's capable of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, I lost my train
And
of
he's
thought
very
for a
much an enigma. Like, we don't know anything about Sal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Again, we know some background on Sonny. We meet 2 wives. We meet his parents. We see his children. We don't know anything about Sal. Again, they say he's a Vietnam vet, but he's never been on a plane. So that's not even true. Like, we know nothing about him.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think one of the great things about the writing of Dog Day Afternoon, and worth noting too, the one Oscar that this movie won was for its screenplay. original in spite of it being inspired by a true story. But that one of the great things about its writing is that I think it is very honest about what you can and cannot learn about a person in the span of one day. That like it doesn't feel like you get windows into these characters, but it does not feel like any of them are spilling out their life story in this overly like Hollywood way.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you learn about it in very subtle details. You know, the conversation he has with his mom is incredible. I don't know how I didn't remember it being that good from my last viewings of the film, but that scene, she acts the shit out of that scene.
Judith Malina.
It's heartbreaking. That scene.
And this is a movie that like really knows New York too, and it's like that a person like that is someone who, like, depending on your location, probably every New Yorker has met someone like that before.
Native New Yorker, probably.
Native New Yorker. Yeah, and it's like the cast of this movie is stacked too. Like even some of the smaller players are some pretty interesting people.
Yeah,
Lance Henriksen.
Bishop from Aliens. He's the driver of that bus in the last scene.
He has just that face.
He does.
He just has a face like no one else.
At first, I thought he
also
was
the eyes.
Yeah.
I thought he was the person I confused him with was a guy named Paul Herman, who is this character actor who's in a bunch of Scorsese movies. He's in Goodfellas, he's in The Irishman, and he played Beansy on The Sopranos, who's a pretty minor character.
I love,
Yeah, but that's who I thought it was at first, and then I realized it was Lance Henriksen.
Yeah, sometimes I think I get them confused with young Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, yeah.
Like I remember in Cuckoo's Nest, before it clicked for me, think that it was Christopher Lloyd. I thought it was Bishop.
Yeah. And another interesting appearance in this movie, and this is harder to catch. So, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I'm kind of proud that I caught this one. Very last scene, when you see Sonny looking on as Sal's corpse is dragged away.
Who is this? I know who it's going to be.
Yeah, behind him, one of the people who drags him off, Tony Lip.
That's right.
Ah, wow.
He's
right.
uncredited, though. I recognized him by his face.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of
illustrious film career.
Yeah.
He's been in some...
Apparently, he's a wedding guest in The Godfather.
Yeah, he's uncredited in that as well.
I missed him there. Well, it's a lot of connections to our past conversations here.
Yeah, pretty
and
nice.
Another fun early career character is Carol Kane.
Yeah.
She
gets a much more prominent role.
She's the squirrel, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. That's right.
But she gets
she's excellent.
A considerably prominent role compared to some of these other people.
Right. Some of the other tellers and stuff in the
I think she and the mouth are like two of maybe the main ones.
Yeah. But then, to start to direct this a little bit more towards the finish line, one last thing I want to say about John Cazale's performance in this is that there are a few scenes as, the lights are shut off in that bank towards the end of the movie as Sonny is making these phone calls to his loved ones. And, amidst that and a few other moments, there are a few shots where, you see his eyes just turn back to Sal, and Sal has his eyes just dead set on him. And he is scary in those moments. There was a scene when he's
haunting.
Like, he finishes one of his phone calls and looks up at Sal, just staring him down. And I almost it was almost a jump scare for me. And it's not like anything surprising happened in this scene, but the way he stands there, he just looks ghoulish. And there's this look in his eyes that says to Sonny, like, I'm counting on you. I need you.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I think one of the things that we'll see, and I think we'll tie into Deer Hunter a little bit too, is that John Cazale, I think, plays very effectively the foils to the main characters in the films.
Yeah.
Obviously, Fredo and Michael, right? Sort of playing polar opposites there. I would also argue too that in The Conversation, there's a little bit of that as well. There's a little bit of foil energy there. They have a little bit of a yin and yang kind of interplay, and as the movie goes on, I think you see it come through a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
And in this movie too, it's like there is a very much a whatever Sonny is doing, he kind of is doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And as a result, there is this push-pull dynamic that's just constantly happening between him and the main characters.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I think, is that in this movie, it wasn't supposed to just be the two of them. They had a third who like bails at the beginning.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I'm like, well, what was that guy's role supposed to be? Was he just the getaway driver? Like, what? I'm just curious if they had been in here with this other guy as well. Like, how would that dynamic would have shifted?
Yeah, he seemed like the real 19-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually,
He looked
yeah.
the youngest by far.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a detail true to the real
Yeah.
story too. There was a third accomplice who bailed right as it was beginning.
God, yeah. That's the first very strong indication that this was not going to go well. But
Yeah.
No, and you know, to further that point, I mean, is there anything else you want to say about Dog Day Afternoon?
Yes, and it's this connected to the not so much about the inner content of the movie, but about context. And this is, you know, the one moment in this conversation where I'm going to pull from Oscar Wars.
Okay,
Go
To
for
talk
it.
about the best picture landscape that it emerged into. So it did not win the award, but it was a contender in a rather interesting year for that category, where this is a pool we've discussed on the podcast before, where it loses to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and is nominated alongside Barry
Nashville,
Lyndon, Jaws, and Nashville.
yeah.
Wow.
And then, like, what was interesting about that time period, and like in the context of some of the other stories in Oscar Wars, it sounds like kind of a relatively smooth year for the award show. So there's part of me that thought, reading it, like, okay, well, this is interesting, but why get into that? And then I think really what it was is that this was the pinnacle of new Hollywood at the Oscars this year. This was like, and there was a Robert Altman quote that I think really gets at it, where he's talking about Nashville, but I think that this kind of applies for Dog Day Afternoon as well. It is not a Hollywood movie. He had said weeks earlier when asked about his Oscar chances, it was made outside the establishment, and after all, it is the establishment doing the voting. I mean, it's interesting to think about that as like a context for these movies that John Cazale is in, because some of these are among the most lauded movies ever.
Yeah.
But they emerged from this time where, like, the, you know, directors are really having a heyday. This is like a kind of a period when auteurs are championed, and it's this like kind of I feel like John Cazale like appears not only in like these movies that happen to be highly lauded by the Academy, but it's just like a pinnacle of like just auteur filmmaking in general.
You know, we were talking earlier about some of the kind of insecurity and the vulnerability that he taps into a lot. And you'd think, okay, the other side of the coin of that would be some sort of heroic, kind of confident nature. But his foils in these movies are not traditionally heroic. They're very
They're
anti-heroic.
Yeah.
You know, and so this might be one way to start talking about the Deer Hunter, which is that his character is very much a foil to Michael, not Michael Corleone, but Michael with a really intense Russian last name. I can't remember.
Let me look it up.
And Michael is probably the most traditionally heroic character that he plays opposite to. And I guess we can, but I mean, it's a great point there about New Hollywood.
Michael Vronsky.
Thank you. But yeah, you know, the Deer Hunter being, you know, a film that was released in 1978. I always mistake this movie in my head with the movie Coming Home. Have you guys seen that
I've
one?
not
No,
seen it.
but I know it's the same year.
Same exact year.
Also nominated for Best Picture.
Exactly. The two of them very much connected. Like both of them had a lot of success at the Oscars, and they're about extremely similar subject matter.
Also,
this was like the Vietnam War, like in really, really cleaning up.
Also, just to be clear, we don't want to confuse the Deer Hunter with The Killing of a Sacred Deer, the Yorgos Lanthimos movie from 2017, or with, for that matter, Killer of Sheep, Charles Burnett film from around this, like, I'm not sure what year. I think it's 76 or 78.
There's also two different bands called Deer Hunter. There's Deer Hunter and there's The Deer Hunter, which is a different band.
There's another band called Deer Tick. There's Deer Hoof.
Yeah, Deer Hoof. That's
There's a movie called Deer Skin.
There is also a band that is populated by people from this very school that we work at. That's called Killdeer.
Yeah. So this is
shout out to Killdeer, by the way.
This is none
Wonderful
of those
people.
things. This is The Deer Hunter, directed by Michael Cimino. You know, released in 1978, and as if we haven't hammered it home enough already, starring Robert De Niro and John Cazale.
And Christopher
And
Walken.
Christopher
And
Walken,
Christopher Walken.
John
Yeah,
Savage,
Meryl
and
Streep.
Meryl Streep,
Yeah.
who famously, I think this, we could also mention this too. You were talking about the fact that John Cazale had to be advocated for in many instances, and this is probably the most extreme example of which, you know.
Yeah, and it's a pretty touching story too, that by this point, you know, a few years have passed. This is the first film he's even done in a few years. He goes back to being a theater actor for, not that he ever wasn't, but he goes back to theater for much of that time. And then in 1977 receives this terminal lung cancer diagnosis. By then, he has begun a romance with Meryl Streep, which doesn't last a very long time, but is profoundly impactful for both of them. And for some around them too.
Yeah, I mean they met on the production of like a Shakespeare in
Measure
the Park.
for Measure.
Measure for Measure.
Yeah.
In 76.
I have to imagine that for a certain number of actors, this is akin to like watching John Lennon and Paul McCartney meeting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
an extraordinary, like a meeting of extremely like historic acting minds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they are a couple at this point in time. And so like I'm a little bit hazy on the exact production timeline of The Deer Hunter, but you know, I believe that I don't know if he was already cast, but it's clear that like people knew that John Cazale didn't have long to live, but they wanted to, you know, Robert De Niro wanted to do one more thing with him.
Exactly. And Meryl
Yeah.
Streep, I think, also went to bat for him as well. I mean, pretty much everybody did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Meryl Streep is basically only in this movie because of John Cazale.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that, you know, John Cazale, like the movie's production schedule was organized around him
Yeah.
to keep him in it. And I mean, it's saying something because he doesn't have a gigantic role in that movie, but, you know, to prevent him from, I mean, he was considered uninsurable at the time, but then Robert De Niro paid out of his own pocket for his health insurance. Like, what a great move. And, you know, he kept him in the film that way. The production schedule was moved up so his scenes could be filmed first. And yeah, Meryl Streep took what she saw as a pretty dull stock part in the movie just so she could be with him. I had to think of that every time you see the two of them in a shot together in this movie, and there's quite a few of them. It was just like
At the wedding.
at the
Yeah.
wedding, and
Yeah.
in the very last scene too, there's a moment.
Yeah, but
that's
it's
true.
interesting because they're not romantically paired. Like she's
In the movie.
romantically paired. Yeah, in the movie.
Yeah.
She's romantically paired with two other characters in the movie.
I feel
Yeah.
really bad for the woman who's romantically paired with John Cazale in this movie.
Yeah,
He cold cocks her.
yeah,
Oh yeah, that's
Pretty
like
brutal.
that's a rough moment.
There's
Yeah.
that actually felt like a callback to Godfather Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
When his wife Deanna just starts dancing very flirtatiously with Connie's husband to be and does so almost
Yeah.
as a provocation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Fredo's character just is like, okay, I'm going to let the other bodyguard deal with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this movie,
He's like,
just
I'm taking charge.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
going to control this woman
yeah,
who at
Not-
this point is like has essentially like been manhandled by another man. Like she hasn't necessarily even really done anything. It's
Yeah.
like a guy that comes and gropes her, and then she's the one that gets like sucker punched.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, and I think one of the other thing that really sat with me this time watching this movie was the type of emotional repression amongst all these guys.
yeah,
The fact that it takes curious for you guys.
Mhm.
By the end of the wedding, how many drinks do you think they've had in their system? Let's just like ballpark figure. What do you think?
like at least 5.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
go up.
go north
I'm
of
going
that,
up.
too.
I mean, because when are we starting?
Well, that's the thing. They get started early,
They're
right after
starting
work.
early. So I'm
Yeah.
like, are you saying just at the reception? But if we go all the way back earlier in the day,
Yeah, well, and then even later, they
Yeah.
do like a weird sort of like the
They have
the
like a bachelor
groomsmen
party.
have like they have like a groomsman, like what's his name? John Savage's character, the one who
I gotta look it
it's
up.
not Nikki.
it's
Steven.
Steven, thank you.
Yeah.
So
Stevie.
you know, Stevie goes off and he has his honeymoon, and his groomsmen are like, "We're gonna go hunting,"
Yeah.
and they continue to drink.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I mean, I have to imagine that by this point, all of them are at least 8 to 12 drinks in
By the end of the wedding reception,
Oh, yes.
before they even go hunting totally.
before they go
Yeah.
hunting. Totally,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And it's crazy. Just like you see that there is a lot of love and camaraderie amongst them, but it seems like they just don't acknowledge it on a day-to-day basis, that it has to come out in these moments like a wedding or like being extraordinarily inebriated.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I found that to be one of those funny little details in the movie or it really colored how I kept watching the movie.
Yeah, I can't imagine that this community in like rural Pennsylvania are like, raised to be all that forthcoming with their emotions.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all like the sons of immigrants.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too.
It's like
That's
a
really
Russian
interesting.
immigrant community. I think the wedding is at a Russian Orthodox church.
Right.
Yeah, and then kind of like with Godfather Part 2, this was to me it felt very much like an elegy as a movie. There's a lot of ways where this was my first time watching it, by the way, but
Me too.
even early on, like you kind of feel like the fates of some characters are sealed, like with that sort of dark foretelling scene at the wedding where Steve and trying to remember his wife's name.
Is she named?
I believe
She is.
named.
I'm sorry.
Towards the end of the movie,
Towards the
Angela.
Michael keeps
Angela.
going to her and it's like, Angela.
Oh, right, okay.
Angela.
Yeah. So when Steven and Angela are taking this drink, this ceremonial drink at their wedding, and they say, "Spill no drops and it guarantees you good luck," or something like that. And of course, you see this close up of Angela's dress where 2 drops are spilled.
Can I say that my parents own one of these cups?
Oh, interesting.
Oh, cool.
Theirs is a little bit different. The one in the movie, the like woman in the dress is holding 2 different cups. But actually, the one that my parents have, she's only holding 1 cup, but the other cup is the dress. So it's like it's hard to explain definitely to the people listening.
Yeah.
But it's like the 1 cup is on like can kind of be turned. So like one person drinks out of the little cup at the top and the other person drinks out of the dress turned upside down at the same time. My parents bought this at like an antique store. I don't think they had it at their wedding.
I was gonna say I was curious if that was part of their
And
wedding
I don't know
reception.
that they've ever attempted to drink out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun Christmas game.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe now that you've seen The Deer Hunter,
Yeah, absolutely.
you can say, hey, we should bust this out.
And perhaps the scene in The Deer Hunter when John Cazale gets the most spotlight is during the initial hunting sequence, when there's this time when they're all gathered up on a hill, they're like getting their equipment and clothes ready, and then the John Cazale character, who funny enough is also named Stan, call back to the conversation.
Yeah.
And he is asking Michael, Robert De Niro's character, for some boots, and he just very confidently refuses.
Yeah.
And then there's some roasting of Stan here, where they're just talking about how he's never prepared. He just all the other guys are bringing these these big rifles, and he just brings this little revolver and acts as though he's going to be John Wayne or something. And they're ridiculing him, but you get the sense that Mike goes a little bit too far, and then in the end,
even the guys are kind of like, "Come on, Mike."
Yeah, it's mainly Christopher Walken's character, Nick, who's just kind of like, "What's the matter with you?"
Yeah. It just seems like this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and for whatever reason, it was like Mike was like, "No, man, you keep doing this over and over, and at some point, you have to realize." You cannot count on somebody to bail you out every time.
I said that was like the spotlight scene, but now that I think of it, there's another one later on.
Yeah,
there's a real big one later.
When they come back for another hunting scene.
Yeah.
Later.
And it's, at this point, not all the characters, but Mike, Nick, and Steve have all gone to Vietnam and served.
And some of the other guys, and I don't think Stan is included in this, but one of the other guys is like, I would go with you if it weren't for my knees.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah.
You don't know how much of it is posturing, how much of it is sincere.
Yeah.
But you don't really hear things like that from Stan.
Yeah.
Stan is just sort of like, he just seems like one of those guys who is resigned to the fact that he's working in a steel mill and he's going to be the friend or the guy in the friend group who gets constantly chided for his looks and for the fact that, like you say, he's maybe the one who's least popular with the girls.
I think he
there's
knows,
that one line. Sorry,
I think he knows he's not made for war.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, I think he knows he would not make it back. Some of these other guys, I think, have this mindset of like, oh, well, I'm going to be a war hero. And I think Stan knows that's not him.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Donnie to the dude and Walter Sobchak of the rest of this group. Like, he knows he's like sort of, maybe not the laughing stock, but he's kind of like
he's the butt of a lot of jokes.
Yeah, he's the butt of the jokes.
I will say that the first scene, when they're getting ready to hunt, there is that detail where he talks about he flips it around on Michael, and he starts basically claiming that he thinks Michael is gay.
Yeah,
he uses some language that is pretty offensive. We're not going to say it here. Again, a product of its time, I think, in some respects. But I really took that detail to be one of those kind of self-hatred details where you get angry at somebody else who cannot live, who can clearly live a type of life that you desire, but is choosing not to. So instead of looking at that person as, having strong character, you just complain about the fact that you can't live vicariously through the fact that he could have gone home with this waitress or whatever.
How can I beat this person down to my level?
Well, there's a John Wayne comparison made in that same scene, and it made of course we have to think of Joe Buck and Midnight Cowboy. Idealizing this type of manhood, but also knowing consciously or not he is something different.
Yeah, very different. And not nearly the image or the facade of John Wayne.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing I was just going to say really quickly, and this is just me personally, but I felt like the last scene with John Cazale, the one that we were talking about comes in later, of him being very flip with a gun. Was actually, I feel kind of bad saying this because we've been gushing about this. I felt like that was one of the weak points of the film. I feel like it was trying to say something about Michael, and it was his moment to express to his friends how his mindset has changed dramatically because of having been through the war, and that something like that just feels so different for him, and he can't stand around and let them do that. Particularly, just the revolver and the Russian roulette of it all. But I don't know. There was something about that felt a little clunky.
That's so interesting to me because I don't know if either of you read about in this scene and the filming.
I read about it.
Yeah.
I did read about it.
So that's so interesting to me that I don't know if this has any effect on your read at all.
No.
But for those who aren't aware, there is a live cartridge in this gun.
That John Cazale apparently was obsessively checking the gun to make sure that it was not actually going to be the one to go through his head. Yeah. Even in spite of that, I felt like it was one of the weaker parts of the film.
Or do you feel like it was too heavy-handed in delivering
It was
the
a little
message?
too heavy-handed, and then to be honest with you, I felt like John Cazale, I felt like it, and maybe it was everybody around him, it was just not, I felt like everything else was much stronger that I'd seen. And that's just me. I tend to be a little bit of a contrarian sometimes, but that was just my read on it. I mean, this movie, I think, does some things extremely effectively. There are some very famous scenes in this movie that are, whether they are politically correct, whether they are factual or not, undeniably just will take your breath away with the intensity.
Exactly.
And so there are some things it does really, really well. And I think maybe because this film, when it lands so strong, a moment like that felt a little underwritten or underdeveloped. So that's just me.
I didn't personally have that feeling, but it's interesting to hear. This is one of the other 3-hour movies of this bunch, that it's like, a long sweeping epic. And I like to think about this movie that no scene in it is in isolation. Everything's part of a larger chapter. There's a very distinct sort of sweeping flow that it has. And that John Cazale shows up in like kind of at the bookends of it. There's this big chunk of the movie when they're in, it's factually, they filmed it in Thailand, but it's supposed to be Vietnam, where he's not there.
Yeah.
But you do see him, in that early wedding sequence, and you see him at the bitter end.
Yeah,
too.
when
'cause
Michael returns, yeah.
The kind of third act of the film is the aftermath of Michael coming home, and Nick being AWOL,
Yeah.
and Stevie being
AWOL in his own way too.
Yeah.
in his own way.
Yeah, being alive but maimed.
Choosing to
Yeah, he
keep himself away from
removed
the life that he lives.
Yeah, he's removed himself. He hasn't, I think, even seen his wife. And I think the implication, and maybe it's outright said, is that he doesn't think he can fit into his former life anymore. I mean, he has lost both of his legs in the war, and that's also, I think, he knows that having to have a person care for you because there are many things, particularly at a time in the 70s, you in that state are not going to be able to do a lot of things for yourself. And I think he feels as though if he's in a hospital where people are being paid to care for him,
and he's around other people,
and he's around
like
other
him.
people who are going through the same thing, then he's not a burden. And I think he's afraid of burdening his wife.
Yeah. And
all very relatable things. I mean, there are a lot of details, I think, in how this movie's acted and written that I think hold up tremendously.
Yeah, I have trouble with war movies a lot of times because I find them unpleasant to watch. And I think even as I do think this movie is very solid, and I think it's very well done. I think there are fantastic performances. I do like this movie, but I find much of watching it unpleasant.
Oh,
deeply,
I felt the same way too. Even the stuff that's not supposed to be unpleasant.
Yeah.
I think it speaks a little bit to what you said too. Having seen this movie before as well, the feeling of just imminent suffering
Absolutely.
just completely hangs over this movie. I mean, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I forgot how quickly, with Meryl Streep's character, we're introduced to just an abusive alcoholic father.
Yeah.
Right away, it's like, no.
And we don't
can't
see him
even,
again.
We can't even enjoy this day of celebration without being reminded that, there's a main character in this film that is suffering every day of her life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly powerful movie. And, I mean, John Cazale, I mean, his role in it is kind of, I mean, for the kind of erratic moments that his character has, he's like one of the more steadfast parts of the movie. He's like, someone who all of the characters going to Vietnam can leave and come home back to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By definition, he doesn't really change much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's just, he's just one of those, I mean, he's a homeboy.
Yeah.
Literally.
Very much so.
But yeah, and he's all the way there to that final scene. And I mean, especially knowing the arc of his life and career, I mean, I think as sad as that last scene is, I was thinking probably the most about him in real life.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, especially in the context.
Yeah, watching the funeral scene, kind of knowing that a lot of these same people are going to be at John Cazale's funeral in real life, probably not long after that. It's really, really tough to watch.
Yeah.
Although in the movie, I mean, I think if you don't know the context, he doesn't look sickly in it.
Yeah.
He just kind of he's always looked a little sickly.
Someone said that in the in that documentary too.
So it's like he doesn't look sickly in this because he doesn't look more sickly,
right,
than at any other point.
Exactly. But I mean, the fact in the timeline is that we said it before, but he never lived to see the release of the film. He sadly passed away on March 13th, 1978. And one of the really touching details of that final chapter of his life, though, is that Meryl Streep was with him every step of the way, and that in that same documentary, I Knew It Was You, that Al Pacino mentions that in spite of how great Meryl's body of work is, that's the first thing he thinks about with her, the way that she was there for John.
It was also really striking to listen to. I think he had a brother in that documentary.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Just gush over the fact that he's like, wow, Meryl Streep was, again, apart from her incredible body of work, was just an incredible human in that moment. So yeah. I mean, it's definitely a tough way to sort of end this, but there are I think he did leave some pretty incredible work there. And again, too, I mean, I think one of the things that really personifies a lot of his work is that he was a kind of a character actor the whole way through in all of these films. He even if he was maybe billed more as a lead. He never really feels like a lead in these films.
Yeah, he feels like such a team player. And he just, I mean, we've talked about how these other actors at the time are advocating for him and are like Meryl Streep is agreeing to be in The Deer Hunter so that she can be with him.
Yeah, and De Niro is
De Niro's paying for his health insurance. So it just always feels like these actors they just want to be with him. They respect his craft. They respect him as an actor, as a professional, and he also just seems like a good, nice person and like a good hang.
Yeah,
a good hang, and artistically a very stimulating presence too. And I sort of feel like, especially in light of seeing that short documentary about him, I feel like he was an early example of maybe like a type of character actor who we would see more of later on. And I think that, maybe there were fewer people like him at his time. Debatably, maybe there were quite a few, but it's like the sort of person who I feel like the Coen brothers would have been great about casting, where someone who's like not conventionally good looking, but just it feels so real, like someone who you would know in real life.
You, before we started talking, said you thought of an actor that felt very much like John Cazale.
Yes, like someone who got to have more of a full career that Cazale could have had. And that, to me, it occurred to me while watching that documentary, Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, you talked about Coen Brothers. I felt like William H. Macy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Both of them known for that kind of hangdog vibe.
Yeah.
And again, too, like kind of a side role player for a while, I think, before he really kind of was able to take off.
Yeah, and what really clicked the Steve Buscemi comparison for me, apart from Steve Buscemi just being someone who's interviewed in that documentary, is that there was a moment when they play a Cazale scene from one movie and then cut right to him, and I couldn't tell their voices apart for a moment. Yeah. So it's funny to think about, but
that documentary also ends on a funny note about, I think it's Steve Buscemi who did the voice of a bank robber
in a Simpsons
episode. And that he was the other person that he was cast in the Simpsons episode had a striking resemblance to Sal.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I got a chance to act with it.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of fun.
Yeah. And so then in lieu of an unlikely shared universe to finish this off, I think it's more fitting to think about might have beens for John Cazale. Had he lived longer, what are some other things that maybe he would have shown face in? And I mean, well, one thing I feel quite confident about is that had he lived longer, I'm almost certain he would have worked with Scorsese at some point.
Yeah.
And the role that I thought he could have worked for him, weirdly, this might sound surprising, but hear me out. Billy Batts in Goodfellas. I could see him doing a more like vulnerable spin on that character than Frank Vincent did, where it's, instead of, Frank Vincent in his very macho way saying, I mean, if I was trying to break your balls, I would have told you to get your shine box. Maybe a little more like if I was trying to break your balls, I'd tell you to go get your shine box. And then look of, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that after he says that.
Right. I wouldn't have thought of this either, but I could actually see him in a very different valence be the Joe Pesci character, the brother to Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull.
Interesting.
Yeah, just from the perspective of that character is also carries around a lot of sadness as well.
Yeah.
And that the two of them clearly had a really good working relationship as well. And so, I don't know. It would have been a different movie, but I could totally see how an actor like that could.
I can kind of see it too.
And you know what? I mean, and it doesn't happen a lot, but Cazale could scream.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
We see that here and there in
Dog
some
Day
moments.
Afternoon.
Dog Day, yeah. I mean,
Godfather Part 2.
Godfather Part 2. Yeah. I mean, he could ramp it up, and he could dial up the misogyny. So Deer Hunter, Yeah. So I mean, it's not. I don't know. Yeah.
And so some other roles that I thought could have gone to him had he lived longer. Given the pairing of leads in this movie, I like to think that he would have been in Michael Mann's Heat. Maybe he could have played because that's a Pacino De Niro movie. I feel like if anyone in that movie, maybe he could have played the weird handler character that John Voight wound up playing.
I was just gonna say the John Voight character. That's the one that came to mind. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, who's not in much of the movie, but you can't
he's
forget
not.
him
No,
when
but
you see him.
exactly that what you just described
has-
is John Cazale to a T.
If I remember correctly, I think he has the same kind of weird hairline too in
Yeah.
that role. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see him too being in, some other Michael Mann movies
yeah.
like
Yeah.
Thief or
Which I haven't seen yet.
Manhunter.
Same, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I think he could have very well been in some of those movies.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking a lot about auteurs,
Yeah.
and famously, Cazale was like kind of like a teacher's pet, so to speak, for some of these auteurs, Coppola and Sidney Lumet and Michael Cimino, who,
Yeah.
obviously, has anybody here seen Heaven's Gate?
No. I've heard
I haven't either.
quite a bit about it, but
I
I
have
haven't
too.
seen it.
Yeah, but no, I mean, he seems like he could have been, right at home with a lot of these other people.
Yeah, the last one that I'll say, just as a might have been sort of role, and this might be kind of a big swing to say, but taking this back to another thread of our conversation is that I think if he had lived to the point when The Sopranos was being cast,
Oh, definitely.
I knew
think-
you were going to go here.
I think that though I think the person who got this role absolutely deserves it and owns it, I think he would have been a pretty good contender for Uncle Junior.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Age-wise, it plays out.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
It's so interesting, though, because Uncle Junior, I don't know. It could work. I need a little bit more time.
Yeah,
with it.
I was going to ask you, as I know you're a huge Sopranos fan, and I was going to ask you what role you think John Cazale would have played, because I think we can safely assume that he would have been in The Sopranos if he
They would have found a way to make
if
it
he
happen.
had lived to that point.
They would have wanted a Godfather connection. I mean, they got it with Dominic Chianese.
They got a bunch
but-
of them.
Yeah, they got some minor
Actually,
ones.
fewer than you think.
Fewer than you think.
A lot
but
of
yeah.
Goodfellas, not a lot of Godfather.
Gotcha.
Tony Lip.
Tony Lip.
Godfather,
Well, that's another
into The
one. That's true.
Sopranos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless we have anything else, I wanted to wrap with just a quote from Al Pacino about John Cazale, unless we have anything else.
Do it.
Yeah.
So this was from the New York Times interview with Al Pacino for the Godfather 50th anniversary a couple of years ago. And he said, John Cazale in general was one of the great actors of our time, that time, anytime. I learned so much from him. I had done a lot of theater and 3 films with him. He was inspiring. He just was. And he didn't get credit for any of it. He was in 5 films, all Oscar-nominated films, and he was great in all of them. He was particularly great in Godfather 2, and I just don't think he got that kind of recognition. So
Yeah.
we just wanted to give some of that to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would agree. I would agree.
For you, the listeners, we hope that we've shed some new light on him for you. And yeah, one of the greats, gone too soon. Wish we could have had more. Maybe if he were still around today, maybe he'd be in Megalopolis.
Possibly.
Maybe he would.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
Coppola would have kept him around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coppola seemed to be a big fan.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why don't we just share a little bit about our plans for
Yeah.
our upcoming cycle, right? We're shifting away, obviously, from our Best Picture, unique Best Picture winners. Yeah, with this, we're going to close the chapter on this, and the next cycle that we're going to start is going to be about high school movies, movies that
Yes.
take place in high school or directly reference times in high school. And
Yeah.
we're pretty excited. We have a pretty
Yeah.
good slate here. We have 2 suggestion box.
One from you, one from me.
Exactly. Pretty excited about that. And,
Yeah. And this, maybe we'll unpack this more as we get into it, but there are a bunch of movies here that seem to have affected us very deeply.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In
That's,
this
I
high
think, the
school
thing about high
category.
school movies. They can feel very formative.
They can, yeah. And I mean, these episodes will be released kind of near the end of the school year, so there you go.
There's a little bit of that going on.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. If you want to send us an email, please do. It is sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
And
yeah.
on Letterboxd, you can follow me at Julian_Barthold.
And you can follow me at Patroness of Cats.
And someday you'll be able to follow me, but probably not for a while.
All right,
Awesome. Guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank
long
you.
live John Cazale.
You got it. All right, guys. Good night. Take
night.
care.
Good night.